Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for the President's Welcome Back Address. My name is Zeb Davenport, and I serve as the Vice President for University Advancement and External Affairs. For those of you who are new to the university, the President's Welcome Back Address is one of our campus's many traditions. And this is the time where the President and members of the campus leadership reflect on our past as we look to the future. Today has been an amazing day in the history of Westchester University. As you know, earlier we celebrated the ribbon cutting of the Sciences and Engineering Center and the Commons. And I know we all are proud about our collective commitment to student success. And folks, let me just tell you, right now we have great momentum. And we're using that momentum every single day to propel us into the future. And having just celebrated our 150th anniversary, the sesquicentennial, just thought I'd try it. I like sesquicentennial. Okay. Westchester University is in its prime, and we continue to move forward with full steam ahead. Never in the history of this university have we had the momentum that we have today. And in a moment, you will hear about that momentum from our president, Dr. Christopher Fiorentino, and the executive vice president and provost, Dr. Laurie Bernotsky. They will share their thoughts on our commitment to student success. You will hear about our past, our present, and the vision for our future. Now, after the address is over, we want to invite you to join us in the Hoberman Friendship Plaza for some refreshments. But right now, I would ask you to help me welcome to the stage Dr. Laurie Bernotsky, the Executive Vice President and Provost. And without further ado, I would like to introduce the 15th President of Westchester University, Dr. Christopher Fiorentino. Knock him out there.
Well, good afternoon, faculty, staff, students, and distinguished guests. It's the start of the fall semester, and it's commonplace in fall classes to ask our students what they did over the summer. In that tradition, let me start off by sharing a bit about what I did over the summer. This past June, Sue and I traveled into Philadelphia to attend the 50th anniversary of Westchester University's athletic training program. That program started way back in the 1970s, and it was one of the first 4 accredited athletic training programs in the country. It was also the first athletic training program to admit women. The program was founded by Phil Donnelly, someone who has always been both a real visionary and a real character. The celebration was held at the Academy of Fine Arts. Claire Lewis, the College of Health Sciences Major Gift Officer for our foundation, and Katie Morrison, the Chair of Sports Medicine, played a major part in putting together the event. The event was very well attended. Most of our sports medicine faculty were there. Scott Heinrichs, the Dean of the College of Health Sciences, was there. Lots of our alumni were there. Let me give you just one example. Sue and I spent some time chatting with Kevin Guskowitz and his wife Amy. Kevin is the current chancellor for the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He started his illustrious academic career by earning a Bachelor of Science in Athletic Training from Westchester University. And he was just one of the many successful graduates who filled that room. A room full of people who were enthusiastic and energized and engaged. As president of our university, I've always had a fairly simple and straightforward focus. That focus has always been on student success. I love talking about student success. I love promoting student success. I love seeing student success. And I really love it when you bring 50 years of student success together in one room. It was just fantastic. I had to give a speech that night. I had my prepared remarks, but I put my remarks aside and I just told people what I was feeling. I told them that being the president of university is a hard job. And over the past 2 years of the pandemic, it's been a really hard job. And let me just say, quickly aside, that's the only mention of the pandemic I'm going to make in this entire speech today. But events like this one remind me of why I do this job. In the president's office, you sometimes need those reminders because most of our day-to-day work is about problem solving. We spend so much of our day dealing with problems: faculty problems, student problems, facility problems, financial problems, health problems. In that sort of environment, it's pretty natural to just think about problems. We all sometimes fall into the trap of focusing on little things going slightly wrong instead of big things going really right. And then moments come along, moments like the athletic training program celebration, that remind us of what is really right about what we are doing at Westchester University. And that wasn't my only reminder moment this summer. As the summer was coming to an end and the school year was just beginning, Sue and I spent some time going through the residence halls, greeting students who had just arrived on campus. At one point, we were in Commonwealth Hall. Music was blaring, students were dancing, and I thought, why not? So I joined in and I danced with them. My understanding is that there's actual video evidence of that moment that is now making its way across the internet. If you watch the video, two things become clear. First, I love to dance. And second, I will never be invited to join our national championship dance team. The students we met and danced with in the residence hall were overflowing with energy and excitement and enthusiasm, just like the folks at the athletics training program celebration. When we took some time to chat with them, when we took some time to dance with them, when we took some time to shake their hands and look into their faces, we received an unmistakable reminder of why we do what we do. We were reminded that our work is pretty awesome because it's work that really matters, work that makes a difference, work that leads directly to the success of our students. That day in the residence hall, when I saw all those incoming students, I realized that we must be doing something right when it comes to student success. I say that because in a year when most colleges are facing declining enrollments, we are welcoming our largest incoming class ever in the history of our university. We've also had more students asking to live on campus than ever before. We must be doing something right if there are so many students who want to be at our university and so many students who want to be living on our campus. I'm now starting on my 40th year in my academic career. I was 12 when I started. That means I'm fairly far along in my career. Some folks, as they get far along in their careers, become more grumpy, more grouchy, more crotchety. I can't see Sue. Is she nodding? After my summer of reminders, that is not at all the case with me. In fact, this is the most excited I have ever felt at the start of a school year. I'm excited because I see all the work that is being done across this campus to promote and to ensure student success. We see signs of our commitment to student success in our newest building on campus. Today, we had the ribbon cutting for the Sciences and Engineering sesquicentennial. For the Sciences and Engineering Center in the Commons, or SECC for short, which is how I will refer to it from now on. It's the most complex and advanced building on campus and the largest building construction project ever undertaken within the state system. Universities love to tout new buildings because they are big things that we can point to and say, how about that? In my view, buildings only matter when they directly connect to student success. And when it comes to student success, physical space can be really important. It's not just important because it gives us great classrooms. It's important in subtler ways. Let me give you an example. Back in the 1980s, I was teaching economics on the second floor of Anderson Hall. That floor had a narrow, cramped, crowded hallway. Students would often sit uncomfortably on the floor in the hallway as they tried to get some reading or studying done while waiting for their next class. Between classes, that hallway completely filled with traffic, so making your way down the hall was like navigating a challenging obstacle course made up of sitting people and standing people and walking people, all stepping over and around one another. The poor students in that hall were trying to get some schoolwork done, and our school building wasn't helping them at all. Now I want you to think about my description of the old second floor of Anderson Hall when you next walk through our marvelous new SECC building. The SECC has wide open hallways. It has lots of alcoves where students can sit and study on benches rather than on the floor. The building is even peppered with lots of little study rooms. The entire SECC was designed with the focus on the student experience, both inside and outside the classroom. Buildings like the SECC only really matter if they impact student success. On that front, it's an amazing structure. Let me give you one example why. This week I had a chance to tour the SECC's Immersive Learning Center. It's an incredible space for hands-on learning where our health sciences students can practice things they could normally only experience at clinical sites. For instance, it has treatment rooms that are equipped with high-fidelity mannequins, and these mannequins can be adjusted in all sorts of surprising ways. They can change their heart rate, their breathing, their blood pressure. The mannequins are also equipped to talk. From a control room, teachers and trainers can speak through the mannequins to the students. And these mannequins can even, believe it or not, simulate the birthing process. Think about that. How many colleges can tout a new building that houses mannequins that are giving birth to baby mannequins? In this immersive learning center, students are getting great practice at treating patients in simulated environments. That will make them much better at treating real patients in real environments when they leave our university. Again, that is physical space connected to student success. We see our ongoing commitment to student success not only in our new buildings, but also in some of our new and growing funds. Funds designed to help students travel abroad, purchase equipment, complete research. One of my personal favorites is the Fund to Finish. We noticed at Westchester we were losing some students late in their college career. These students were doing just fine in college, and then they just stopped going to college. These were students with the finish line in sight who suddenly disappeared from the track altogether. So we did a bit of digging to figure out why. We listened to their stories, and we learned that most of them just ran out of money. These students ran out of financial aid or ran into some unfortunate family circumstances, and then they just couldn't afford to finish college. That's why we started the Fund to Finish, a fund dedicated to helping students who are nearing the finish line for college. This fund helps them get across that line. One such student is Coop Teithel. Coop and his family fled from Myanmar due to religious persecution. They came into the United States with refugee status in 2011. At that time, Coop suddenly found himself in Upper Darby High School. He was in a new school, in a new country, with a new culture and a new language. After only 2 years in this new place, Coop's journey through college began. It was a journey that took him to different schools, a journey that involved semesters of college, followed by semesters of no college. Coop periodically had to stop full-time college and start full-time work to financially help his family. It's a journey that at one point involved Coop working full-time as a sushi chef. And apparently he makes a really mean rainbow roll. That's what I hear. It's a journey that eventually brought him to Westchester University. It's a journey that has lasted 10 years. I spoke of students rounding the track with the finish line in sight. Coop has rounded that track many times. He has run more than a mile. He has run more than a marathon. His journey has been one marathon after another. This semester finally brought Coop to the finish line of that long race. But he had been in college so long that he had run out of financial aid options. He didn't have the money to finish school. The Fund to Finish granted Coop an award this semester, an award large enough to get him over that finish line. This semester, Coop will graduate Westchester University with a degree in computer science, and he's looking forward to his future career as a software engineer. That's a story of student success involving a fund that is all about student success. We also see our commitment to student success in our recent R2 designation. Over the years, we've been attracting incredible people to come work at our university. As our faculty and staff have grown stronger, they've generated more and more research and attracted more and more grant money. That R2 designation acknowledges all that additional research. But let me also be clear on what that R2 designation means. At Westchester, we are a teaching-centered institution, and we are not looking to change who we are. R2 institutions are teaching-centered schools with a strong research mission. That means that we are putting strong teachers who are also strong researchers into the classroom. And that is a great combination to ensure student success. As our research output has increased at Westchester, it has also created lots of research opportunities for our students. One such student is Zack Morrow. Zack is a sophomore chemistry major. He's also a student in our honors college. Zack has been working on research with Dr. Danielle Sheridan, one of the newest faculty members in our chemistry department. What are they working on? Well, you may have heard of this chemical compound known as carbon dioxide. And you've probably heard of it because it's the compound that's basically destroying our planet. Zack and Dr. Sheridan are working on finding ways to break down carbon dioxide and turn it into a renewable energy source. Put simply, they are trying to find a way to turn something really bad, CO2, into something really good, renewable energy. That is really important research. And students like Zack get to be a part of that research. Zack spent over 250 hours in the lab this summer. He already has one publication, and he's working on several more. All that work will be important in Zack's journey to become a research chemist. That's why all the research leading to our R2 designation is so important at Westchester. That research allows faculty and students to collaborate, and their collaboration leads directly to student success. We also see our ongoing commitment to student success in recent changes, big, major changes to our budget. And they are changes that really enhance the financial health of our university. The person responsible for those changes more than anyone else is our Provost, Laurie Bernotsky. And Laurie will be speaking in a few minutes. Laurie and I have known each other for quite some time. When Laurie was first starting out at Westchester, all the way back in 1997, she was 12, I was the dean of the School of Business and Public Affairs. I knew early on that she was a talented social science researcher, so I asked her to join me at a meeting of the Chester County Transportation Management Association. At that meeting, we were listening to a consultant who presented survey results related to traffic flow patterns in Chester County. It was scintillating work. This consultant had degrees from Ivy League schools, and we knew this because he kept reminding us of that during the meeting. During the meeting, he and Laurie got into an argument about survey research methods, and this argument did not go well for him. In fact, the argument went so poorly for him that it was pretty painful to watch. And actually, I really enjoyed it. After that meeting, the Chester County Transportation Management Association stopped using that consultant, and they started using Laurie instead. I knew then that Laurie was going to do great things at our university, and she really has. Just one example would be her work on the budget. Recently, Laurie became a part of a committee working on the funding formulas for the state appropriation to the state system. The old funding structure was penalizing Westchester for budget shortfalls at other schools. It really was not very fair. Westchester was getting around $3,700 per student, while several schools in the system were getting over $9,000 per student, and the rest of them were somewhere in between. Laurie went to work on that committee, and her work was pivotal in creating a new formula, a much fairer formula, a formula focused less on protecting universities and more on educating students. A formula that has added $19 million to our base allocation at Westchester. Since Laurie has done so much to ensure Westchester's financial future, I've asked her to come up and talk a bit about what the future has in store for our university. Laurie?
What our university has accomplished leading up to today. But what about tomorrow? What does tomorrow have in store for Westchester University? What will our school even look like? In many ways, the Westchester University of tomorrow will be a very familiar place. Familiar because even in the ever-changing higher education environment, our core mission won't change. The higher education environment is in constant flux as universities grapple with decreasing enrollments and declining revenues. In spring of 2022, there were almost 700,000 fewer students attending college compared to just the previous spring. Universities are trying their best to navigate this tough terrain, and many are trying to redefine themselves. Those universities are experiencing something like middle school. Do you remember middle school? Do you remember it fondly? Really? Who remembers middle school fondly? Yeah, me neither. In middle school, most of us floundered around erratically as we tried on new clothes and tried out new friends, all in a persistent pursuit of that one thing that constantly eluded us, a clear identity. I remember at one point in middle school, and this makes me cringe to this day, I was wearing prescription glasses with tinted gradient blue lenses. Oh, it gets better. In the bottom right corner of those lenses were my initials in sparkling silver glitter. Yeah, that was a good look. Middle school was a time full of bad looks. It was a tough time, a time of constant redefinition. And many universities today are kind of going through their middle school phase. They're redefining themselves, reinventing themselves, rebranding themselves, all in an attempt to find an identity that works. The good news for us at Westchester is that we are well past our awkward middle school phase. We are a university, as Chris explained, with a firm financial foundation, with strong student enrollments. More importantly, as a university, we know who we are, and who we are, to put it in a middle school vernacular, is pretty cool. So who exactly are we? We are primarily an undergraduate, four-year residential, regional comprehensive university that is and will remain our core identity. It's who we are, and we know who we are. We know what we do. And moving forward, we need to keep doing what we're doing because, quite frankly, we're pretty good at it. To be true to our core identity as a regional comprehensive university, we need to always be affordable and accessible to students in our region. There are lots of universities on a mission to make themselves as exclusive and inaccessible as possible. That can't be Westchester. We need to serve the diverse students in our region, and that means being accessible and affordable. At Westchester, our accessibility has been increasing. At one point, when we were chasing the goal of exclusivity, we were only admitting about half of all applicants. Now that we're prioritizing accessibility, we are admitting about 87% of all applicants. Now, some of you might ask, does this just mean we're letting weaker students into the university? No, that is not the case. Our student profile hasn't changed. Our incoming student GPA hasn't changed, but our student population is changing. It is becoming broader and more diverse. Many of you have heard me say that we proudly educate the 99%. There are lots of schools fighting it out for that top 1% of students who can pay top dollar for a college education. We'll focus our attention on the remaining 99%. As that 99% of students continues to arrive on our campus will change. Students will be coming to our campus from more ethnically diverse backgrounds, more racially diverse backgrounds, and more socioeconomically diverse backgrounds, among other identities. We need to be ready for that change. We need to stop asking if these students are ready for Westchester and start asking if we are ready for these students. In other words, we need to be student ready. As we work to serve the diverse 99% of students, we need to remember that it's pretty easy to promote diversity the wrong way and pretty hard to advance diversity the right way. Lots of universities have received loads of praise for their diversity numbers. When you really look at what they're doing, they're increasing the diversity of their students without ensuring that those same students are being supported in ways that allow them to be as successful as their peers. They're bringing in lots of traditionally underrepresented students, but they just aren't retaining or graduating those students at the same rate. Our intent at Westchester is to close racial and socioeconomic achievement gaps while simultaneously maintaining high retention and graduates for all of our students. That's advancing diversity the right way. But it's a tall order because we already have a diversifying student population with a strong overall graduation and retention rate. In fact, we just received new data from US News and World Report's college rankings, data that no one has even seen yet. Those data show that when we look at all the R2 schools spread across the country, and there are 128 of them, we are ranked 26th on our overall graduation and retention rates. It's a lot to be proud of. 26 out of 128. That puts us squarely in the top quarter of all R2 schools, and that is really good. But unfortunately, those data aren't true for all of our students. Our ability to graduate and retain our students of color, among others, falls short. Think about what I just said. I didn't say our students of color do not stay and graduate at the same rates as other students. Instead, I intentionally said this is an institutional deficit, not a deficit amongst our students. And that is our challenge, our moral obligation, our ethical imperative. We must address the barriers, both intentional and unintentional, that create systemic obstacles to success for our students. While we celebrate your success in helping Westchester achieve these amazing rankings, we must be equally willing to admit that we can do even better. We can become more diverse while graduating and retaining even more students. Many of the things we will do to achieve that goal, such as increasing the availability of tutors and student success coordinators on campus, are not just things that benefit traditionally underrepresented students, not just things that benefit economically disadvantaged students. They are things that benefit all students. They are things that create a rising academic tide that lifts all boats. Of course, to lift all those boats, we need to be more than just affordable and accessible. We must also be an institution of absolute academic excellence. Any school can be affordable and accessible if it's content to serve up instructional experiences loaded with mediocrity. It's far more difficult when you want those educational outcomes to be brimming with excellence. But that's exactly what we need to do. That goal, the goal of academic excellence for the many, not just the few, is something I've had very strong feelings about for a long time. And when I say a long time, I mean all the way back to my pre-college days. I don't think we need to establish an exact date on that. I was a first-generation college student. When it came time for college, I was fortunate enough to receive scholarships and loans that enabled me to attend Messiah College, which is now Messiah University, a small private college with a big price tag. Of course, like many working-class families, my family thought the only people who went to college were doctors and lawyers. So I started as pre-med, and then I switched to pre-law. I created lots of confused looks in my family when, as a junior at Messiah, I told them I wanted to get my doctorate and become a political science professor. Imagine that. Who would want to do that? Who even knows what a political science professor does? And some of you might be thinking that right now. And Chris, I'm looking at you. But that's just what I did. Once I finished my undergraduate degree, I went on for a master's and a doctorate at Oxford University, again on scholarships and loans. I received a fantastic education at Messiah and a fabulous education at Oxford. But at both schools, I always felt a little bit out of place, kind of like a poor kid in a rich neighborhood. In fact, when I was at Oxford, I was so broke, and I probably shouldn't admit this, but I ended up working illegally in the UK. Back in 1989, if you were sauntering down the high street in Oxford and you decided to pop into the body shop, you would have met a young American graduate student there named Laurie, who was very eager to help you pick out a fabulous facial cleanser or a marvelous body lotion. After spending all that time at private universities, I came back to the US. I was finishing up my dissertation, and by the way, I was still broke, like living with my parents broke. And to pay the bills, I ended up working legally this time as an adjunct at 3 separate schools: Messiah, Temple, where I was getting my second master's degree, and Harrisburg Area Community College, which often goes by the rather unfortunate acronym HAC. That's true. It was a very interesting experience teaching across these 3 schools. I distinctly remember that we were coming up on spring break, and my students were all talking about their spring break plans, but they actually had very different things to say. My Messiah students were talking about trips to destinations I had never even imagined going to. One was planning to lie on the beautiful beaches in Aruba. Another was planning to hike up the majestic mountains in the Andes. My Temple students were trying to figure out if you could really sleep 8 people in a double room at a cheap hotel in Daytona Beach. And when I asked my HAC students about their spring break plans, they just looked at me and said, "What spring break? I'm working." To those students, spring break meant a break from class, not a break from life. We often talk about economic disparities. We don't often really see them. At that moment, I really saw them. And seeing them so starkly had a very big impact on me and my career. I realized that I was the product of private education, but that I wanted a career in public education. I realized I had received an excellent private education reserved for a select few, and I wanted to provide a similarly excellent public education to the many. That has really been the goal that's guided my entire academic career, a goal centered on inclusive academic excellence. We can't provide that kind of academic excellence unless we recognize that we are all part of a community of educators. We have started to use that phrase, community of educators, more and more at Westchester. But what does it really mean? In the past, we have thought of our faculty as educators and thought of everyone else as, doing other stuff. Moving forward, especially in the context of the Moonshot for Equity, we need to think differently. We need to realize that we all play a central role in the educational success of our students. A student who is having a great classroom experience with our faculty won't have a great educational experience at our university if they're struggling with a financial aid problem, or a mental health issue, or fighting through food insecurity. That's why we all have to work together as a community to ensure our students' educational success. That makes us all educators. As a community of educators, we have been providing a strong academic experience for our students, but that experience can be even stronger. How? On that front, I actually have an announcement to make. Moving forward, all new faculty will have a course release during their first year at WCU. With that release time, faculty members will receive extensive training on innovative pedagogy and inclusive excellence, which is a fancy way of saying they will learn how to be exceptional teachers for all of our students. We have an amazing faculty who are doing amazing things, but we believe they could do even more amazing things if we invested more in their teaching up front. And in case you're worried about this, I know some might be, this training won't be top-down. Instead, we'll rely upon members of our faculty to formulate this training. It will be a process of excellent and experienced teachers helping less experienced teachers succeed in the classroom. And because we really mean it when we say we're a community of educators, we will also be creating similar training for our staff, training that emphasizes how they can best play their part in our community of educators. We have exciting times ahead, and this new initiative is all part of our ongoing pursuit of academic excellence. Of course, we also have to recognize that the very meaning of academic excellence is changing as the world around us changes at an unprecedented pace. We need to prepare all of our students for this change. Students graduating today will change careers 5 to 7 times. Think about that. That's not changing jobs 5 to 7 times, changing careers 5 to 7 times. In the past, when a student graduated with a particular degree, say an accounting degree, it was pretty clear that they would have a career as an accountant. Periodically, they might change jobs, moving from one accounting firm to another, but that's not the common career story of a student graduating today. Today, that same student might start out as an accountant, move to a job in HR, then to a job in computer coding, and finally end up starting a business that provides a service that hasn't even been imagined yet, let alone one for which we could have provided education. So how do we prepare students for that? One way is to deepen our commitment to helping our students learn how to learn. Said another way, we must double down on our general education goals that prepare our students to think critically and be resilient in a constantly changing environment. Political scientist Benjamin Barber has observed that our world is no longer a world primarily divided between the weak and the strong, or the successes and the failures. Instead, the central division that defines our world is between learners and non-learners. At Westchester, we need to make certain that our students are squarely situated on the learner side of that divide. We need to be affordable, we need to be accessible, we need to be academically excellent, but we need to be more than that. As an institution, we need to recognize our role in promoting the common good, not just because we're part of a state system, but because higher education at its best is a public good. A good that not only benefits the individual, but also benefits society. The world needs smart people who want to help solve our most intractable problems. At Westchester, we are producing not only the next generation of leaders, but also citizens who will shape the politics and outcomes of our communities. And those individuals must understand the importance of contributing to the common good. To me, this is an incredibly important part of our mission. Yes, we want our students to be personally and professionally successful, but lots of people are successful without doing much for the world around them. Ideally, our students are out there making positive changes in the world. Those changes can be on a local level or a national level or even a global level. If you've watched the news at all lately, you're constantly reminded that we live in a world filled with problems. Poverty problems, hunger problems, health problems, crime problems. But how many of those problems could we solve if smart, capable people really cared enough about the common good? I often like to say that at Westchester, we are changing the world 4,000 graduates at a time. Think about the cumulative impact on our communities, our Commonwealth, our country, by producing that many students committed to the public good, year after year, decade after decade, century after century. Before I close, I want to leave you with one of my guiding principles that comes from a book in one of my favorite TV shows, The West Wing. Do not let the urgent crowd out the important. And while it's getting harder to tell the difference, let today be a reminder that the most important thing we can do is to ensure that we are student ready. I said we're changing the world 4,000 graduates at a time. I hope today reminds over 2,000 dedicated Westchester University faculty and staff that the work they are doing is changing the life outcomes of each and every one of those graduates. That's who we are at Westchester. In some ways, it's who we've always been, and in other ways, it's who we must continually strive to become. We are a school committed to educating the 99%. We are a school committed to academic excellence. We are a school committed to producing thinkers and learners. We are a school committed to graduating students who will contribute to the common good, and we must be a school committed to being student ready. That's what makes us Westchester University. Now Chris will take the podium once again for a few final thoughts on our university and the year ahead.
Thank you, Laurie. Listening to Laurie, I feel compelled to tell this story. As I said, I was dean, and I hired Laurie, and we were negotiating salary. And when we had openings back then in disciplines like political science, we would get hundreds of applicants. And so I was fairly cocky about it, and I said to her, political scientists are a dime a dozen. And boy, was I wrong about this political scientist, but she has never let me live that down. So I just thought I would share that. But Laurie, you have done incredible things at this institution, and your passion for higher education is just inspiring. So thank you very much. I started off today talking about optimism. Optimism because of all the positive things we have done, are doing, and will continue to do to ensure student success. Optimism because so many things are really right inside our university. But let me end by recognizing a growing pessimism outside of our university. This pessimism is part of an anti-college narrative that has crept into certain corners of our public discourse. It is a narrative that says college classes have no value. College degrees have no value. College experience has no value. It's a narrative that says there's no value in the work that we do. It's a narrative that's more than just wrong, it's downright dangerous. Their narrative is wrong for the same reason that so many people get so many things wrong these days. They accept things because they seem right rather than because they are right. They accept things because they seem true rather than because facts and evidence confirm that they are true. When I say facts and evidence, every recent economic study that has assessed the value of a college degree has concluded that most college degrees are quite valuable. The Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity published a recent study aptly titled, "Is College Worth It?" The report answered that question with a resounding yes. The report found that the return on investment for most college degrees is exceedingly high. That is, most college degrees pay for themselves many times over. Of course, anti-college rhetoric doesn't reference such research. It's a rhetoric grounded in narratives, like the story of Mark Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg is a college dropout and he's a billionaire. So who needs college? Well, you know who really needs college? Someone who decides not to go to college because of stories of a few rich folks without college degrees. That person could really benefit from college classes that hone critical thinking skills, classes that help students understand good versus bad arguments, and classes that allow students to appreciate the strengths and weaknesses of narratives as a form of evidence. The anti-college narrative is not only wrong, it's dangerous. Dangerous because our world, as Laurie noted, is rapidly changing. It's changing over to a knowledge economy. The worst thing you can do in a knowledge economy is encourage people to get less knowledge. When I hear the anti-college narrative, I get pretty worked up. It's a narrative that can make one awfully pessimistic about the work being done at universities across our country. When I think of Westchester, I become much more optimistic. Optimistic because we are so ideally suited to push back on the anti-college narrative. The anti-college narrative questions the value of university education, but a Westchester education is an exceptional value. It's an education that, as Laurie discussed, is affordable and accessible to students. Our yearly in-state tuition is $7,700, which is a whole lot less than the nearly $20,000 one would pay at Penn State, or over $60,000 that one would pay at the University of Pennsylvania. Westchester may come with a lower tuition price tag, but it still delivers academic excellence. Our students spend time with exceptional teachers and excellent researchers. Our students spend time surrounded by a community of educators dedicated to their success. The anti-college narrative says that college makes no difference in someone's life. At Westchester, I see quite the opposite. We are changing lives, and we need to remember that each day we come to work, we are changing lives. Each morning when we step into a classroom, we are changing lives. Each moment when we interact with students, we are changing lives. No matter what the anti-college narrative has to say, we are in the business of changing lives, and business is good. Thank you very much.